Welcome to Sea of Thieves, the pirate paradise where you have one goal and one goal only, to make some money. Okay, obviously we want to spend that money, but that begs the question, how can a new player acquire their first fortune? And what should they spend it on? As much as we love Sea of Thieves for all the freedom it gives us, it also comes with a lack of direction in how to achieve that. And I am here to fix that. For me, it will be easy to turn around and put another million gold into the pile of 17 million that I own at present, because I have access to a bunch of endgame voyages and years of experience that would make that possible. But for a new pirate, as a solo player, it's going to be a little more difficult. So I decided to buy a brand new account and show you guys how you can not only purchase your own ship, but also get your first million gold on top of that. And all it takes are a few days. No PvP skills or special gold boosting events necessary. Also, quick announcement, I've officially become a Gamer Subs partner. So if you're in the market of getting discounts on energy drinks, teas, protein bars, or ramen, yes, they have ramen now, make sure to go to gamersubs.gg/Cliff or follow the link below to save 10% whilst also directly supporting my channel. And who knows, maybe if you guys really vibe with the products, we might even get our own Gamer Subs waifu cup design. Anyway, that's enough selling out for now. Just like any good story, this one starts at the beginning. Waking up on day one on the high seas and not a single piece of gold in my pocket, I was ready to make use of my shiny new quest table to begin my journey. Our first course of action was to purchase an Emissary flag license. That's a one-time purchase of 20,000 gold, allowing you to raise the flags as often as you want. Basically, you can level up your Emissary flag by putting treasure on your boat that corresponds to the company you are representing. Shiny chests for the gold hoarders, skulls for the Order of Souls, and cargo for the Merchant Alliance. Doing that is going to level up the flag to a maximum grade 5, and when you sell your treasure whilst flying its maximum level, the treasure you sell for that company will come with a bonus 150% of its original value. So you can see why this would be the first thing we want to get our hands on. Unfortunately for me, the game had other plans. I have to do the tutorial first to be able to dive for anything? Oh god, okay. Oh no. Please don't tell me this is what— of course it's him! So this is how I found out that I cannot in fact use my quest table at all until I've completed the tutorial. Annoyed as I was over having to listen to Phantom Santa Claus, I do recommend you pay attention to him when you pick up the game for yourself, because the tutorial is actually pretty good now. But if you think this was going to stop me from starting my money farming agenda, you'd be mistaken, because en route to complete my tutorial, I found a shipwreck. Shipwrecks are positively loaded with loot and are absolutely worth a detour, especially if you are new to the game. And if you're lucky, you might even find some king tier loot. That stuff is extremely valuable and basically the highest tier loot you can find out in the world. Rapier Cay was my destination for the tutorial, where I was tasked to complete a simple X marks the spot voyage. That very island also housed a mermaid statue, which I decided to destroy via cannon fire just to make my life a bit easier. These statues can drop up to 3 gems, ranging in value in ascending order from blue to green to red. These things can also be sold to any of the companies to gain gold and reputation, so whichever you prefer, you can just sell it to them. Finding the treasure was no problem at all, and I even spotted a collector's chest. Luck was definitely on my side, because not only was this thing filled with loot, I could also use it to transport 3 trinkets or skulls at a time, meaning this chest is the only thing I am not going to sell until I end my session. For now, it was time to return to Sanctuary Outpost. I could have sailed on over to New Golden Sands, but since that's a massive port town, selling my loot there would take a lot longer than just going back to Sanctuary. I began bringing my treasure to the corresponding faction representatives and watched as my first payout was being poured into my pockets. Once everything was sold, I had amassed the 20,000 gold pieces necessary to buy an Emissary flag license. Just that there was still one thing I hadn't considered. I need to be level 15? God damn it! Yeah, my endgame player privilege was definitely showing. It's been so long since I had to buy an Emissary flag license that I didn't actually know it took reputation level 15 to be able to purchase it. That means that our day 1 prime directive had changed. The original plan was to get 60,000 gold pieces so I can get my hands on Emissary flags for the 3 main trading companies. Instead, I now had to choose which of the 3 companies I wanted to focus on so I can expedite the process of just getting one of them. Reputation is a lot more difficult to come by than gold. I had a bit of time to make my decision, because before I could plop down a voyage on my quest table, I had to complete the tutorial for all 3 companies. Every single one of these tutorial voyages sent me to the same island, probably just defaulting to the closest one, and taught me the basics of what some of their voyages look like. Since I couldn't buy an Emissary flag anytime soon anyway, I also decided to spend a couple hundred gold on a few cosmetics for my pirate. Because today, we are not Cliff the story guy, we are Ledge the tail dude. Either way, honestly, you can choose whichever company is the most fun to you or whichever has the cosmetics that you like the best. But since making a lot of money very quickly was our goal for this challenge, I decided to focus on the Order of Souls, and I'll explain why later. Gamers, allow me to let you in on something. The secret to making a lot of gold early on is island hopping. Early game voyages grant you absolutely abysmal payouts compared to the treasure you can find out in the open world. So we are looking for two things specifically: skeleton captains and messages in bottles. Captains can spawn on any island at random and drop something called skeleton orders upon defeat. These orders are basically the same as the voyages you can plop down on your quest table, just that most of them grant you better payouts than said low-level voyages. Messages in bottles function in the same way, barring a few exceptions, and can be found in Flotsam, out on the sea, any shoreline of any island, as well as inside shipwrecks. Really, the only thing we want to use voyages on our quest table for is telling us which island we should go to next. So we'll get our guaranteed payout from that voyage, yes, but we will also be checking the beaches for any skeleton captains or messages in bottles. Since we want to hit level 15 with the Order of Souls first, we will be switching between bounties for a skeleton crew, which will send us to small islands, and bounties for skeleton captains, which will send us to bigger islands. I decided to start off with the latter, and my first destination was Lone Cove. Side tangent, when you drop your anchor to stop your ship's momentum, that's completely fine, just make sure you raise it again before jumping off your vessel. If somebody attacks you while you're doing a voyage, you want to be able to just drop your sails and get moving, instead of having to worry about raising your anchor whilst being under cannon fire. Also, if another pirate sees that you have your sails down whilst anchored, that will show them that you are new to the game and as such mark you as easy prey. Anyway, as part of my quest on Lone Cove, I would have to defeat a few waves of skeletons before the captains show up. You're gonna want to pay attention to the tooltips because they teach you how to defeat the various types of skeletons in the game. Before giving them my attention though, I decided to check the beaches in true island hopping fashion. We found treasure and a message in a bottle and an ammo box. Yes! What do we have? Another Skelly! Wait, is this a boss? That it was. This bottle contained a quest that's more valuable than anything I had access to at my current level. But before we could tackle that challenge, we have to finish what we came here for. To complete my voyage, all I had to do was take out all the skeletons by following the tooltips on how to defeat them, and once everything was said and done, I could collect my treasure, one skull for every of the 3 captains I have defeated. I also found a snake basket right next to a snake. Not that this would sell for a lot of gold, but this gives me a chance to show you guys that you can stop snakes from spitting venom at you by playing music. Additionally, I got my hands on a rowboat, so I grabbed it and docked it to my ship before proceeding. I decided to complete one more skeleton crew voyage on my way to the boss quest before arriving on Cannon Cove to take on the big guy himself. Once again, raising my sails, then dropping the anchor to stop my momentum before raising it immediately again so I'm not a sitting duck in case of an attack. The first wave of skeletons were those of the shadow variety. You're gonna need some kind of light source to make them vulnerable, and while a lantern will do just fine, you can also use a flare, which every ship spawns with, to imitate the sun. I also decided to use some fire bombs here. Those are honestly the best way to combat skeletons of every type, but obviously you only spawn with a limited supply of them. Now, I was trying to set up a keg stack to blow up the boss in one go once he spawned, but when I had to face a wave of keg-wielding skeletons, well, let's just say that even hundreds of hours in the game don't stop you from making mistakes. Uh-oh. No! No! I missed! There goes my plan. Without my kegs and having run out of fire bombs, fighting the boss was definitely a bit tedious. I recommend switching to a sword and blunderbuss if you're low on supplies, and remember to aim down sights before shooting to reduce your spread, so that as many pellets as possible hit the boss for maximum damage, allowing me to finally claim my rewards. I recommend pit stops to sell your loot on a frequent basis to make sure that you don't lose a massive stack of treasure in case you get sunk. And since Sanctuary was right around the corner, that is exactly what I did. But you know what? Selling your loot like this is incredibly tedious. If I wanted to get to 1,000,000 gold in a reasonable amount of time, I'd need a faster way of getting this done. And thankfully for us, there is one such way: buying your own ship. Becoming a captain via purchase of your own vessel comes with a bunch of benefits, such as being able to save your cosmetics so you don't have to reapply them every time, or decorating it with a variety of trinkets. But the biggest benefit is that captains are allowed to use the sovereigns. The sovereigns have a nifty harpoon-equipped 10 and that makes offloading treasure a lot faster. And you can sell all of your treasure to them, after which they will bring it to the corresponding faction representatives in your stead, saving us a lot of time. The cost for that privilege, 250,000 gold pieces to own a sloop. Our own fortune, about 48,000 golds. I was now a couple hours into this challenge, and obviously there are faster ways to make money. It would be easy for me to go and take on a world event like that Fleet of Fortune over there to make a bunch of gold in one fell swoop, but there are a couple problems. For one, I would not recommend day one players to get anywhere near a world event in 2024. Yes, the loot would be a lot better than doing island hopping, but as a new pirate, completing them is going to take you a lot longer than if you had a base level of experience in the game, and the longer you spend trying to complete a world event, the more likely it is that some other crew is going to attack you. And so far, I was trying everything in my power to avoid other ships, knowing that a new player likely is not going to win those fights on their first day. The second problem was a lack of supplies. We didn't have any coin to spare in order to purchase cannonballs or planks from the merchant, so even if I wanted to, I didn't have the means of completing that fleet event. Now, I did remember having seen a storage crate when fighting the boss on Cannon Cove, but forgot to take it along, so I came back to rectify that mistake. I also found another message in a bottle that gave us a delivery quest which we could do later. The storage crate, which could be purchased from the Merchant Alliance at any outpost, was our one-way ticket to Supply City, because with this thing in hands, I can just walk up to any barrel in order to siphon its resources, and there's no place more stocked up on supply barrels than a seafort. Making sure I stay in the western part of the map, known as the Shores of Plenty, my target was the Imperial Crown Fortress. There we could combine acquiring treasure with getting supplies. On the way, I made a pit stop by Sea Dog's Rest where I found another message in a bottle. Unfortunately, that was a crusty one that tried to send us to a shrine. Ignore that for now, because that's another thing I do not recommend doing on your first day. Between Sea Dog's Rest and the Imperial Crown Fortress was yet another shipwreck, this time with a red beacon sticking out from it. On the note of things you should ignore, this is a Reaper's bounty. The thing is marked on the map and can only be sold at Reaper's hideout, so unless you want other people knowing your exact location, do not put this on your ship. I decided to pick it up and leave it in the water so that it could despawn, making sure that other crews don't have a reason to come here in case they wanted to have it. Other than that, obviously, I picked up the other treasure I found. Now, sea forts are probably the least intimidating forts in the game. You can pretty much just stand in one spot and wait for the phantoms to come over to you as you mow them down. I recommend using a pistol because they only take one shot to defeat, and the pistol has the fastest reload in the game. Once you defeat the boss, you can grab the key from where he stood and open the vault. The treasure is honestly not too crazy. It's meant for players that don't have time for long play sessions, but the supplies are absolutely worth the detour if you are planning for a long session. I'd usually recommend not spending too much time supplying up as a new player because you're gonna lose all of that if you get sunk, and trust me, you will get sunk at some point. But since we have been left alone for a few hours already, I decided to do it anyway, hoping our luck would continue. Also, if you're crazy about keeping your barrels organized like me, here's a bit of a pro tip. If you have a bunch of fireworks, you can make sorting your storage crate really easy. So right now, we fill the fireworks and only stuff that we want to have, right? So I want chain shots, I want blunder bombs. Boom. What else do I want? Probably pineapples, right? Now, this storage crate can only take stuff that is already in the crate, and not like bananas and stuff like that. Honestly, that isn't super relevant for your first day, but once you gain some experience and you get into a habit of keeping combat crates under your cannons for easy access during fights, it might come in handy. What will be relevant for your first day is being able to read the map. As we discussed earlier, there are certain things in the game that will be marked on the map, such as the Reaper's bounty. And as I was trying to find my destination for the delivery quest we picked up earlier, I found two marked vessels in that general direction. I could see both of them on the map because they were flying the Emissary flag of the Reaper's Bones. The Reaper's Bones faction is one that comes with a couple of key benefits. For one, if you have a grade 5 Emissary flag, you gain that 150% bonus for every single regular piece of loot, no matter what company it belongs to. And also, at grade 5, you can spot other emissaries on the map. The downside, you will always be marked on the map yourself as soon as you raise it, and you can only sell your treasure at Reaper's hideout. No fancy sovereign harpoons there. For an experienced player, this in combination with completing world events and fighting other players will be a good way of making a lot of gold very quickly. But I think you can see why I recommended the Order of Souls over this high risk, high reward proposition. What you need to know is that you should stay away from these ships because chances of them wanting to fight you are higher than those that don't fly that Emissary flag. Meaning, my delivery quest had to wait. Alright, please, if this delivery sends us to Sanctuary, we're gonna be okay. The Reaper is done fighting, we need to adjust our plan. We go north. We go sell our stuff. Now, that was the plan, but yet another shipwreck was tempting me just a little ways away from the outpost. Considering how tedious it is to move treasure without a captain's ship, and seeing as how the Reaper was on his way to the hideout instead of to me, I decided to chance it and grab some more loot before going to sell all of it. And to say it was worth it would definitely be an understatement because the loot was really good. This was my biggest haul yet. When I arrived at Sanctuary, I was giddy with anticipation to find out how much gold we'd make. And well, we managed to double our fortune. Since it only took me 2.5 hours to gain 100,000 gold, I was fairly confident I'd be able to buy my own vessel by the end of day 1. The real question was whether or not I'd be able to reach level 15 with the Ode of Souls for my Emissary flag. But for now, we just continued on our mission, checking for captains and bottled messages, as well as taking on emergent encounters such as a random skelly ship that spawned on me. I even got around to finally doing my delivery quest that has been sitting in my inventory for a while. Another reason I highly recommend island hopping for new players is because it teaches you about the fundamentals of the game. You come across a vast variety of different treasures, you learn the basics of sailing, get to know the islands on the map, and you're completing various different quests instead of just doing the same thing over and over again. I also came across a crying chest that, when left unattended, will definitely fill your ship with water until you sink. So while my ship was sailing towards the delivery destination, I took my rowboat to the outpost in order to sell it. All in all, I was making great progress, and for the next little while, nothing of note happened. At least until I came across yet another shipwreck. Now the core message? Treasury! Secret Wilds. This might be a good one too. Secret Wilds, it's at the edge of the map. I mean, it's a long ways away from us, but that Breath of the Sea could be big for a rep. So, remember when we found that other choral message and I told you to ignore it? Well, there are two different kinds of choral messages. One will send you to one of the many shrines and the other to one of the many treasuries. Shrines will always require you to solve some kind of puzzles, and treasuries are basically just wave defense combat encounters that take place in a single room. You can go and complete any of them at your own leisure if you so desire, but if you find a choral message first, that specific shrine or treasury will grant you a unique item called the Breath of the Sea. And just like a mermaid gem, the Breath of the Sea can be sold to any company for a big chunk of reputation. Considering I was still 3 levels away from my Emissary flag after selling my treasure, yeah, I'd be jumping at that opportunity, especially because the treasury of the Secret Wilds was at the edge of the map. Any of these encounters will necessitate you leaving your ship unattended, so you want to make sure you don't have anything of value on board before diving down. The entrance to the treasury is marked with a glowing piece of coral that, when struck, opens the way inside. And that's really all the instructions I can give you. It's an extremely straightforward encounter where you simply take the Disney sticks that lay around the arena to take out whatever enemy is being spawned on top of you. If you die, you are going to respawn down in the arena again, so besides leaving your ship alone, it's extremely low risk. Though to be fair, that one risk is the reason I wouldn't recommend you come here as a new player unless you have a choral message that sends you there. But when every enemy is defeated and the encounter is complete, you'll be able to bask in your riches. Yes! Yes, Ruby Breath of the Sea, let's go. It was worth it after all. And a chest of ancient tributes. It was worth it. The Breath of the Sea follows the same color scheme as the mermaid gems, meaning yes, we had gotten our hands on the most expensive of the 3 varieties. And at this point, all we had to do was stuff our stuff into the statue and pick it back up from a mermaid that will spawn above water. If you get to this point, it doesn't even matter if your ship got sunk, because your treasure will be safe with a mermaid until you come to collect it. Honestly, it was just shy of a miracle that I had gone the whole day without getting attacked. I mean, okay, I was making sure to always sail the opposite direction of other ships that I spotted. The Reaper most assuredly did their part in keeping other players busy, and at one point somebody activated a Fort of the Damned, which probably took a lot of attention away from my little sloop. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, you can stack the deck in your favor to try and avoid conflict, but it is extremely lucky for so many stars to have aligned in order to allow me this peace and tranquility, which means your mileage may vary. The important takeaway is that as long as you sell your loot frequently, you're never going to lose enough treasure to be worth getting angry over. So don't go stacking huge piles of shinies until you get some experience. And if you think it's unfair how lucky I got in my first session on this new account, just wait until I show you day 2. But for the time being, I was about to find out that a bottled message I found on my way back to Sanctuary had granted me more than I bargained for. 3 crests from 1 bottle? Oh, you're right, actually. Crescent Isle, and then this is Rapier. Oh my god! Okay, at this point, it's actually ridiculous how lucky I got, and I knew I was going to have to pay for that at some point in the future. For now, I had a lot of treasure to sell in what would be a reminder as to why investing into my own ship is a good idea. Because my god, do I miss being able to just sell everything at the Sovereigns. But boy, was I getting close to level 15, and my own ship was finally within striking distance too. Now here's the thing, with the 3 quests I got from that message in a bottle, I was certain I'd make no less than 20,000 50,000 gold pieces, allowing me to buy that Emissary flag license so long that I got that final level with the Order of Souls. Meaning for the final part of day 1, I decided to take a bit of a risk to make that last remaining 50,000 gold. I would join the hunt for the skull of Siren's song. The developers call this a competitive voyage because basically every piece of treasure you find on this quest will be marked on the map and be visible to other players who also accept the quest, just like the Reaper's bounty we found earlier. But the item it awards will sell for a flat rate of 50,000 gold. Since this quest was introduced in Season 10 and most players have already finished their commendations for it, I would estimate that there's about a 50% chance that you can complete the entire thing without being contested. For the other 50%, well, good luck. No better way to practice PvP than doing some PvP, I suppose. When accepting the quest, an NPC will spawn on your ship and basically explain to you how the whole thing works. You're also going to get a bunch of tooltips throughout the voyage, so make sure to read them. In essence, it's a very simple X marks the spot quest where you have to find a key and a chest each on a different island. And conveniently, I'd be able to complete the remainder of my quests whilst working on this project. My absolutely stacked bottle quest gave me a staggering 9 chests, all of the king tier variety. Another handful of skulls for my captain hunting quest to get to level 15, and the delivery quest. Yeah, we don't talk about the delivery quest, because now it was Skull of Siren's song o'clock, and I am happy to report that I landed on the side of the coin flip that had me completely uncontested for this entire voyage. Once I put the key into the chest, this skull would be revealed, and if you're a good pirate that reads tooltips, you'll know that you cannot sell this at an outpost like a normal skull. The specific destination of it is only revealed once the chest is open, and in my case, that happened to be Snake Island. And guess what? The Reaper 5 was too busy selling that treasure to even care about what I was doing. In celebration of that fact, I decided to use the skull in order to defeat an Ashen Guardian that just so happened to be on the island before finding Brixie to cash in on my reward. The Reaper was none the wiser. I got to sell my treasure and was now in possession of over 300,000 gold pieces after about 6.5 hours of gameplay. I could finally purchase that Order of Souls Emissary flag, get my hands on a ship of my own from the main menu, and finish the day with 58,305 pieces of gold left in my pockets. Little did I know how much PvP awaited me on day 2, but that is a story for next time. If you can't wait until then, what about you check out my episode on the release day of the Skull of Siren's song, just to give you an idea for how crazy it can be. You can find the code on screen right now. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you guys have a day filled with riches on the sea. And until next time, peace.